Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Beat Your Addictions. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones, with, of course, the man, John Giordano.
And the man, Scott Jones.
And we want to thank you guys for joining us right here on our podcast. If you want more information about anything that we're doing, certainly go to johnjgiordano.com. It's right there on your screen. But we also ask that if you like what we're talking about, please share this with your friends, like the page, and subscribe to the page. And also, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever it happens to be, leave some comments. That way we know what you guys are thinking. It would be really important. And, John, we're not spending money trying to send this out to 1 million people. We'd rather people just share it, right?
Absolutely. Look, this podcast is to help God's kids. So we're going to give you information that's current. And I think you'll really enjoy it if you just watch it for a while and see what you think.
We have a vast array of guests that we bring to you, every week. And this is no exception. We're actually kind of excited about this one. This is Fay Zenoff. She's an MBA, but she's an addiction recovery strategist and advocate for recovery and professional life coach. I mean, she's got a lot going on. It would be hard for us to even explain it. We probably should bring her in and let her do it.
I think we should.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. All right. And joining us is Fay Zenoff. Fay, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, where are you coming from? And we always like to know where we're talking to people from.
Right. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wow.
Oh, I love San Francisco.
Well, if you come right now, it's like winter here, while the rest of the country is having a heat wave. San Francisco in the summertime is freezing.
Really?
What's the temperature?
Well, in the city itself, it could be in the 60s, gray and overcast, and chilly. Outside, just 20 minutes north, you'll be in the heat wave. But
yeah, well, you're talking about two people. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. He grew up in the Bronx. 60 degrees is summer.
I was wondering. I'm saying 60 degrees.
60 degrees. Yeah, that's swimming temperatures. But we're down here in South Florida now, so it's like surface of the sun most of the time.
Well,
right?
60 degrees now to me is freezing.
Yeah, that's when everybody puts their boots on, gets to walk around with their boots. But anyway, Fay, we want to get this kicked off, and you and John got a lot to talk about. But I just wanted you to take a moment before we start talking to tell us about yourself, because we're talking about things like addiction recovery strategist, advocate, professional life coach. If I had time to read everything that you have done, we'd be here all day. So tell us about what you're up to and what you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Well, what I have done since I got sober, there was the period of time beforehand, which was getting the degrees and doing those things so that I could prove my worthiness. And then since getting sober and living in recovery, I would say my work has been focused on trying to deliver the message and help other people find what I found, which is freedom from addiction and freedom from insanity. And so I think, coined the term recovery strategist, which is helping individuals, families, even organizations figure out how to find and then incorporate recovery into their lives. So it's not just a quote unquote program of recovery, but it's a lifestyle, it's a value system, it's a belief system that they would create policy around it, because recovery can, like health, I see recovery as being synonymous with well-being, that anybody who employs it can help the people around them as well. And so it's about a way to make your life and your organization or your family healthier by incorporating recovery and recovery strategies.
John, it's kind of like you. John, you had one life path that you were on, and after you got found recovery, your whole path changed, just like Fay.
Oh, absolutely.
So you guys got a lot in common there.
Yeah, we're very, I looked at it from another point of view, because it's only a 5 to 8% recovery rate. So I said to myself, well, why is that?
Right.
And I found out a lot of the reasons why that is that. First of all, we're not treating people comprehensively.
Right.
The length of stay in treatment is very short.
That's right.
The brain has to heal. The 28-day model was based on a 70-year-old model, which was based on alcoholism, which is outdated. As we know, drugs and alcohol damage the brain, but drugs today damage it even more than alcohol. We're not looking at co-contributing factors to depression and anxiety, which are the drivers, I believe, to addiction. So how do you deal with that? What do you talk about when it comes to your approaches to recovery?
Well, I mean, like you just laid out, I look at where we are historically in the treatment of addiction and, talk about if this were 100 years ago, how would you be treated? If this were 30 years ago, how would you be treated? And for people to understand that they are part, if they choose to be, part of a potential movement to create more equity in our country so that people can get access to the care they need as if this were any other medical or physical ailment. So if, as you know, if this were cancer, if this were diabetes, I would have ongoing treatment and checkups for my remission. I wouldn't be shamed if there was a reoccurrence. So I look at, well, how are medical doctors taught about this? What I think that last I looked, it was they're given 2 hours of education and their many, many years of schooling and training. So, well, if we don't have medical doctors that know how to address this, and then if we have insurance companies who are trying to pay as little as possible, understandably, but then it's the insurance companies who are keeping it to the 28-day model rather than what really promotes long-term wellness. So, which would be as long as possible to have access to all the different modalities of care. We look at the policies, we look at culture. So the first thing I try to do is say, you are being penalized and stigmatized as an individual, but this is actually a big social and political issue. And so if you understand that, then you could be more of an advocate for your own recovery. And when you advocate for your own recovery, you help other people. Whoever shoulders we're standing on, others will stand on their shoulders. And so, we have a right to get well.
Well, most treatment today, is based on an old model that really doesn't work very well.
That's right.
So what are we not looking at? See, I know what we are looking at. We do group therapy, individual therapy, family therapy, spirituality. We're doing yoga, equine therapy. We're doing all kinds of therapies, but we're not looking at the elephant in the room, which is called the human being.
Right.
And what I mean by that is your gut, your microbiome or your microbiota is called the second brain.
Yeah.
Now, I've been talking about that for 20 years. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about it, which I kind of get a kick out of. 60 to 90% of dopamine and serotonin is manufactured in your gut. That's the feel-good drug that we manufacture naturally to feel good. It goes up what is called the vagus nerve and then deposits it into the brain. Now, there are a lot of co-contributing factors to what causes the depletion of dopamine and serotonin and also depression and anxiety, such as leaky gut syndrome, H. pylori infection, hypoglycemia, low thyroid, low testosterone, high testosterone, closed head injuries. All of these things I just mentioned can cause depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. We are not looking at any of this.
Right.
And we're not looking at what's called heavy metal toxicity. Heavy metals interfere with neurotransmission, and it mimics attention deficit disorder and bipolar disorder.
Oh, interesting.
Now, when I lecture all over the planet about this, I was in Taipei, I was in Budapest, I was everywhere lecturing at international conferences. People go to me, wow, I never even thought of that. Well, how can we not think of people as a whole integrative system?
Right.
We're only looking at people psychologically.
Right. I so appreciate that perspective, which I had not thought about either. However, I have a similar approach in that the model that we have today, this short-term crisis intervention model, which is focused on let's make sure people don't relapse. So it's only about one behavior, which is picking up, versus let's look at a holistic model of what is wellness. So we look at financial health, and we look at occupational health, and we look at emotional health, and we look at physical health, and we look at spiritual health. So what I do with, if it's individuals, is we actually audit all of those areas of our lives and look at, where am I today and where do I want to be? And that path from here to there is our journey. It's not looking back at what have I done, even though there's value in that. So go work with a therapist or go work with a sponsor or what have you. But what I do is I focus on, where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what areas of my life, and looking holistically, do I want and need improvement? And each one of us gets to determine that with the help of experts. And your expertise or your insight is crucial. The gut health.
Absolutely. Well, I look at life as, since I'm Italian, I look at it like a pizza. Okay, so each slice is a slice of who you are as a human being.
Yes.
You got spirituality, you got career-wise, you got
Yes.
all these different things that you just mentioned. But the problem is that we're not looking at, first you have to have a good foundation in order to even address a lot of those types of issues.
You're right.
So if you're compromised, okay, physically, besides spiritually, and I understand that psychologically, that's all important, but you have to take it down to the basis, because if you're not producing enough serotonin and dopamine, okay, you're going to look for something to fix that. Now, I work with Dr. Ken Blum. He's the geneticist who found the addiction gene or the alcoholic gene. And there is a gene, that's the main gene. There's a number of genes, but that is the main gene, which is called the DRD2 ALE1 variant gene. And what we did is what is known as the GARS test, which is genetic addiction risk score test, to see if you have a mild, moderate, or severe propensity for addiction. Now, just because you have the gene doesn't mean you're going to become an addict, because there's such a thing as epigenetics.
Sure.
Now, epigenetics means that the social environment can change the gene expression. So as you can see, it's not just a psychological or spiritual problem, okay?
Right.
It's a whole person problem. Most addicts come into treatment, they're volume depleted and protein deficient. So the whole body's out of homeostasis. And if you look at their diet, okay, and you look at their lifestyle, you can see why their brain is out of whack. So we're not addressing this stuff in treatment. We're giving them, you ever see hospital food? You come in and you get sick of eating the hospital food.
Right.
So we're not addressing a lot of the co-contributing factors to this dis-ease. It's not I call it a dis-ease.
Yes.
Right? And most people live in the past and they live in the future and they don't work in the present. So what people look at as life in the past as their failures, and what I explain to people is there are no failures, there are only lessons. It's what you glean out of those lessons is what's going to help you in the present to create a new future.
I love this. I just wrote it down. There are no failures. There's only lessons. And so much of this is how we frame the stories that we tell ourselves. And
That's
then
right.
that becomes our beliefs. Now, I really appreciate what you're
there's a lot of things out there that I'm into alternative medicine. I'm one of the leading experts on alternative medicine for addiction and mental health issues. And we call like a program called Detox, right? I don't know if you went to Detox. No, you were an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Well, you just stopped drinking, because that's dangerous, because you can have a seizure.
Well, I mean, I went into a program of recovery and I learned how to detox slowly, but I didn't go into a detox program.
Oh, okay. Well, what they call a detox program is really not a detox program. It really should be called a stabilization unit, because when you put toxins in to get rid of other toxins, that's not detoxing.
And how many people think, John, that that's recovery? Oh, I've tried it several times. I've been to detox 10 times. It's like, oh, my friend.
Because nobody's educating people really in the truism of what recovery is truly about. It's about looking inside of oneself and becoming the best version of oneself.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's this definition of it's a slow process of change, or it's a process of change to become your best self. And it says nothing about drugs or alcohol. It says nothing about mistakes or repair. It's a process of change and growth to be our best selves. Who wouldn't want that?
Well, most people don't think they can attain it, and that's why they don't want it. So when you're at a homeostasis and your body is in trauma, the way most people have been, okay, most people, the stress causes inflammation, inflammation causes disease.
Yes.
Okay, so most people don't understand. Like, we talk about meditation, and people go, "Oh yeah, I can't. My mind this and mind that." I said, "Well, it's a process, not an event." And if
Yes.
it's anything that's been around for thousands of years, I think maybe you need to take a look at it. Okay. It's just like acupuncture has been around for thousands of years. And people go, "Well, I don't know about acupuncture." Well, listen, first of all, get out of the box that you're in and get into a bigger box and
Right.
see what what you're looking at. And what I've learned, like my wife suffers from bipolar disorder. She's been on medication for 43 years. Now, bottom line, medications, as far as I'm concerned, is not for everyone. And we do it a blanket. Okay. I think there's a very narrow group of people that maybe need to be on medication. Okay. Maybe not. A lot of people don't have the discipline to actually change their outlook in life and change their diet and change and fix the things that are going on inside oneself. And then I came across ketamine. Now, I was against ketamine. In the beginning, I was in Taipei lecturing at a neuroscience conference, and I heard some scientists were lecturing about ketamine. And I says, no, people that are addicts, they're going to go want to chase this.
Absolutely.
So I said, I don't think this is a good idea. But then that was like 4 or 5 years ago. Now, over time, things are changing, and I'm looking at it. And my wife has a kidney transplant. So a lot of the things I know with amino acids and different things that I can help her with, I can't do because of the kidney transplant.
Yes.
So she's doing, matter of fact, the last ketamine treatment was yesterday. A totally different person. I was in shock.
Yes.
Okay, to be honest with you. Her personality changed. She became more outgoing. She's got a bachelor's in mental health, and also she's a certified addiction recovery person. She never would do groups. She felt like she had nothing to offer. No matter what I said, didn't matter. Okay, no matter what anybody else said, didn't matter because it's an inside job. It's what we say to ourselves. That's what happens. Completely different.
Yeah.
So I'm totally on board with that. I also work with Dr. Deborah Mash, who's a neuroscientist at the University of Miami School of Medicine. Matter of fact, she just retired. She was the head of the brain bank. Excuse me. Are you familiar with Ibogaine?
Yeah.
Well, I worked with her for 13 years on the island of St. Kitts, and I still work with her.
Wow.
She's over in England doing what they call the FDA trials for Ibogaine.
Great. Well, I know the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, and he also talks about indigenous treatments and the wisdom in that, just like you were talking about acupuncture or meditation, or in this case, what your wife has been taking, ketamine. There is no doubt. What I would say is that it's not prescribed. It's done with a professional who knows.
It's done with a professional. There's a certain protocol, a certain process, and there's safety that is very important. Okay, that has to be addressed.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and also, I mean, to your point about medication earlier, in not indigenous, but Western medicine, there have been so many studies done about the placebo effect. And so for the people who don't feel like they can change their life themselves or with the help of others, taking a pill for many of them does help, even if the medication's actually not doing anything
Absolutely.
to change their physiology, right?
Well, the brain is very powerful. People don't understand. Thought creates chemical changes in the body.
Yeah. Yes.
So, fear is the mind killer.
Yes.
So people are afraid that they can't do this, or they're afraid of depression or anxiety, and they don't deal with that very well. But there's a lot of stuff out there to teach you how to deal with it. But people just their belief system was so inundated with marketing about take this pill for this, take this pill for that, that
Yes.
we're inundated with that. So people's belief systems become that.
Well, there's the right and the wrong in our country. You know, just say no, as if that campaign is going to convince people that drugs are bad. And it's like, well, not all drugs are bad, and not people who take drugs are bad people. It's what does it do to our bodies? What does it do to our minds? What does it mean to be healthy and well? And for some people, that means taking certain drugs. But to our point, under the guidance of a professional who's an expert in this, who can help, like you said, have a protocol that you follow to get the results that can keep you well and help you grow.
Main thing is safety.
Yeah.
Okay. Like with the ketamine issue, we have a heart monitor on, we have an IV in our arm in case there's any kind of event. And you have a whole process even before you do it with part of your intake to see how you are physically, you know. So there's a whole process in this. And when it's done properly with the proper coaching and a proper training,
Yes.
okay, because intent is the most crucial thing when you're doing any kind of a plant medicine or a ketamine treatment. Intent is primary because that's where the brain focuses on. So one of my jobs was to pre and post with clients that are going into a psychedelic journey is to help them with their intent and then help them to extrapolate out information when they came out of their journey to help them put the pieces together and see why they think the way they think and how they can change it.
Right, the integration.
Regular talk therapy, as far as I'm concerned, deals with what I call the software of the brain. Okay, but now there's the hard drive. That's your subconscious. And what people don't understand, it's just like a computer. You can erase the stuff on a computer, but it's still on your hard drive.
I love it, John. That's such a great visual and understanding. Yes, I totally agree. It's wonderful.
So you have to deal with the hard drive, and if you don't, it's not. I do EMDR. Are you familiar with that?
Love EMDR. It's been critical.
Well, what I did was I made a hybrid of it because I also do NLP. I also do holotropic breathing.
Sure.
Sure. So, and also I'm a hypnotherapist. So I use the tonalities of hypnotherapy, the subjectiveness of NLP, and the holotropic breathing, because breath changes the chemicals in your body. You ever see a person's angry, that's changing everything in their body and in their thoughts. So when you slow down your breathing, you slow down everything changes.
Yes.
So what I did was I put that all together. In 20 minutes, I get rid of trauma. And I do police officers that have been in shootings. I've done guys coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, people that have been raped, molested, over 20-something years.
So what important work and what I'm hearing too is that we need a toolbox of different modalities to help us be well. And it can be as available to us as our breath. And it's just a matter of, are we doing things with intent and intention to be stable, to be healthy, and to be well? And if we don't know how, go actively seek guidance from experts.
Well, like we talked about the insurance companies. The model is broken the way we do things. First, the insurance company's job is not to pay you. The treatment center's job is to get paid. So now you got two opposite things going on. It's not about helping the person that's wanting or needing the help. Now we talk about the 28-day model. If the insurance company's at half a brain, okay, they will look at it a little differently. First of all, if you go to my treatment center and you come out and you relapse, you go to Joe's treatment center, you come out, you relapse, you go to Harry's treatment center, and you make the rounds. Well, that's costing them a ton of money. There's research to show if you go to treatment for 60 to 90 days, depending on the severity of the illness, you'll have better outcomes because the brain needs time to heal.
Well, so this is what I was saying that earlier about the stigma, and I didn't call it that at the time, but the stigma of recovery. And when I said, well, who wouldn't want that? And you said, well, if somebody isn't well in their mind. They can't even imagine that, more or less. I'm not talking verbatim. But what a gift to be able to go for 60 to 90 days to get, like you said, heal and get your brain able to come out of that treatment and be able to respond to life differently. And so rather than seeing it as a punishment or a sentence, to see it as a gift. I mean, what if our family saw that as a gift rather than a shame? Oh, what a shame, they have to go to treatment. And for me, I said, are you kidding? 60 to 90 days to go focus on your well-being?
Well, you got to understand, people have jobs, people have lives, people are afraid of losing their
Or
homes,
two if they
they're
can.
afraid of losing all that. But what they forget is, if you lose your life, you don't have any of that.
Yes,
So we're not looking at reality, because remember, we're coming from a brain that's not working properly.
that's right.
So
That's right.
that's another issue. And there is a model, a 90-day model, that is called the Physicians Referral Network, that and the IPN for nurses also. Okay, that if you get caught using drugs as a physician or you turn yourself in, you have to go to 90 days of inpatient treatment and a 5-year aftercare program,
Yeah,
or you lose your license. Well, they got a 90% recovery rate.
that's right. And not all
Well,
states offer this. Some states, like California, it's just very punitive. You're not even given this window.
Well, you know what the problem is this. It's because when we don't know how to do something, what we do is we try to squash it.
That's
Okay. Or we try to, what's hilarious. In 19 early 1900s, we had a morphine epidemic in this country from the Chinese, when the Chinese brought in, all the opiates and all that stuff.
Yes.
So you know how we try to fix it? Most people don't know.
To-
Heroin. They try to fix it with heroin. Well, we all know how that worked out, right?
Right.
So now we're trying to fix it with Suboxone and buprenorphine.
Mhm.
Okay, Suboxone is buprenorphine and naloxone together, and the reason why they put naloxone in there, so you're not able to shoot it up. Okay, does this work for detox? It's good for 5-6 days, but anything past that, people start to get addicted to that and they can't get off.
I don't know if that's the truth or not. I know that some people are able to be successful and not shooting up, not using other drugs by staying on buprenorphine for up to a year. And I don't know enough. I'm
The
not.
hardest thing is to get off that. It's just like
And then
methadone.
it's about getting
The
off
reason
it.
why Suboxone came around is because methadone. All right, I did the Anna Nicole case. Remember the Anna Nicole
Yes,
case?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on CNN with Wolf Blitzer and all that. They
Mhm.
had me as an expert addictionologist and all this stuff. And it was very interesting that her son died of an overdose in the Bahamas. Okay, he was on methadone also. And what happened was he was doing benzos and he was drinking, and you can't do that with methadone because it suppresses your heart and you can't breathe and you die. Well, same thing with Anna Nicole. Okay, but the lawyer, okay, knew this. And I said, it's kind of funny. He knew this with both people and he allowed her to do this. Matter of fact, he brought in stuff for her. All right. 3 months later, they indicted him, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
So then they changed it to Suboxone. Now, look, they always say people die if they're not, a small, narrow group of people who don't want to change probably need Suboxone. But that's not across the whole group. We did a research project. What we found out, people that are prone to severe depression and anxiety, when they get down to 1 or 2 milligrams of Suboxone, they commit suicide trying to get off.
Right.
A lot of people don't know these things.
So what is the solution there? It's about what are the co-occurring, if you will, therapies to support someone who is
Okay. Well, here's the deal.
Mhm.
The bottom line is that if we just have proper treatment, number one, okay. Number two, if they stay on this stuff too long,
Yeah.
it changes the brain, the molecular structure of the brain. We
Mhm.
know this,
Mhm.
okay? And what happens, people walk around like zombies, and they're doing other drugs, by the way.
Mhm.
If you ever go around a methadone clinic, go down 1 block's radius around a methadone, you'll see every drug dealer known to man.
Mhm.
So we can't use pills to get us out of this dilemma.
Mhm.
Okay. We need to use better treatment. We need to have more open-mindedness on the treatment protocols that we're doing. Okay. We need more people like yourself and myself to be out there helping people. And
Yeah,
the problem is like you said, the stigma,
right.
occultism of it, and the attitude that people have that, well, it's
Yes,
willpower and all
yes,
this nonsense.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is a lot of the advocacy work I was doing, John, was talking to addiction medicine physicians about stigma and the fact that if their patients are no longer using, but they're dying of shame, they are not well. That is not success. So we need to treat these other issues. It's not about stopping to use it. As you said at the beginning, it's about making sure that person is well and
Well,
not just, yeah,
treating them is true, but how we treat them is what the
yes,
problem is. I give you an example. You're familiar with a post-acute withdrawal syndrome?
yes.
You ask an addiction doctor, because I lectured to them too. You ask them, what do you do for pause? And they're going to tell you time. You know why? Because they don't know. I know what to do with it. Hyperbaric medicine. Are you familiar with hyperbarics?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, hyperbarics okay, is pressure with oxygen under pressure becomes a medicine. Doesn't your brain get damaged through drugs and alcohol?
Mhm,
Of course. Okay. So that's why you have pause.
mhm,
So if you heal the brain, okay, with hyperbarics, you cut down significantly the time of pause
mhm,
because
mhm,
that's that little spot in between where
mhm.
people relapse.
Yeah, yeah.
We're
That's
not we're not addressing these things properly. That's the problem.
yes. Yes. Oh, I think we're talking about obviously the same thing, which is needs to be many more modalities, access to those modalities, more research, and a broader understanding of what is wellness.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies don't want that, hon. You got to remember something. It's $1 trillion business.
Oh, I
Okay.
understand.
So
Yeah.
if you help people get off these medications, okay, and change things, they lose money. So
Mhm.
they hire guys to counter your research.
Mhm.
Research can be, changed according to who's doing it too.
Right. Sure.
So,
Yes.
unfortunately, our world is all about money. It's
Yes.
not about helping people. Look at our food supply. Look at our water supply.
Yes.
Look at the things that on television they're telling people what to tell the doctor, what medication to give them. I
Yeah.
mean, the world has changed dramatically, and it's become about money, power, and control. And long as that is present, healthcare is going to take a backseat.
Money, power, and control. Has that not been at the root of our country all along? I
Well,
mean, I don't know.
a country's addicted.
Right. I mean, I would say the foundation of our country.
It's
But
addiction.
there are people like you and like me who have been able to uh, get to whatever our other side is to help other people. So there's hope. And
Always
there's,
hope.
yeah,
Let me jump
yeah.
in for a minute because we're getting towards the end of the show and it's gone by so quickly. Um, yeah, but you had mentioned Faye earlier talking about advocacy and stuff and trying to affect a change. Do you get involved in any kind of legislative reform or anything like that? Do you participate in those things?
I personally don't, but I am very aware of organizations or people who do. And I, of course, watch what's going on. What I think about with advocacy, I think I invite people to take a look at their own sphere of influence and where can they make change in their lives. Is it in their workplace? Is it in their school district? Is it in their immediate family unit? So where people have access, that's where they can make change. And I applaud those who are doing the important work of trying to change legislation. I don't have the stomach for that, but I respect those who do, and it's so important. But then there's all the interpersonal politics, and you have to have a fighting spirit
Yeah.
to be involved.
Well, the problem is, Scott, one of my friends is a lobbyist in Washington. He's telling me it's changed dramatically. What's going on is everybody has their own agenda. I always said, why would somebody want to be a senator and pay millions of dollars to become a senator for $100,000 or $150,000 job? Well, oddly enough, they all come out of there, they become multi-millionaires. Now, when the hell did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just my street sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll put it to you that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is that what I did for myself was I'm in 79 medical and scientific peer-reviewed journals. I work with clinicians, scientists, and researchers from about 15 universities. So this way, when I talk to them, at least they may listen to me.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm not a doctor, actually. Well, I got a doctorate degree, an honorary doctorate degree.
That's
And
awesome.
I have all my other, certifications and all this other stuff.
Yes.
But, the bottom line is when I did all the stuff that I did to use the background, I'm also a chaplain for the police department.
Mm-hmm.
So I come from another point. They tend to at least maybe listen to what I have to say.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're not a doctor, they don't listen. And most doctors don't know anything about addiction.
Right.
Which you said earlier, they get 2 hours of training. I think it's 1 hour.
Right. Oh, is that it?
And it's meaningless because they don't even know anything about addiction.
Yeah. I was honored and surprised to be invited to be a keynote at the California Society of Addiction Medicine at their plenary session. I was the first person who didn't have a scientific background to be invited to be a keynote.
Great.
And it was as a person in recovery talking about shame and stigma and wellness and to re-examine their own shame and stigma as medical doctors and professionals in the field about where are they not coming forward in wellness to serve these patients and that they have a limited scope. But before they can give, that saying of we can't give away what we don't have ourselves, all right? So, but if a doctor or physician is living with shame and fear, how can they support a practice for the patient where they are living without stigma and shame?
Well, it's funny you said. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, please. So
it's funny you said that because I did a lecture to the addiction doctors up in Gainesville, and since I wasn't a doctor because I had to get CMEs, my friend was the president, so he opened the meeting and then he closed it, and I did the meat of the lecture to them, and I was talking about nutrients and amino acids and things like that. So one of the doctors said, "Look, John." They raised their hand. He said, "Look, if you eat properly, you don't need to take any nutrients." So I laughed. So I said, "Tell you what, Doc, look around the room. Tell me who eats properly." And the whole room broke up laughing.
Right.
Okay? Because they were most of them were out of shape.
Right.
They weren't eating properly. They were eating all these processed foods and all this other kind of sugars and all this garbage.
Yeah.
Okay? So I said, look at our food supply. Look how food is growing today. Look what's really going on in our country.
Right.
We're not looking at things. We're just accepting things for what they are instead of digging deeper and to see what's actually really going on. It's all about money.
Yeah. So this point is, if it's about natural foods and healthy foods or the food system or the food delivery system, or if it's about the medication or if it's about politics, each of us can help be part of the solution by getting involved with whatever advocacy, to your point, Scott. Where can we influence change? And it has to start with us. As you said, it's an inside job with the help of people around you. We don't do it alone, right? And we can get well, and it's a work in progress always.
Well, do as I say, not as I do, never worked for me or anybody I know. So you have to live, you have to walk the walk, not just do the talk.
Yes.
I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I work out. I'm 76 years old next week. I don't take any medications for anything.
Yes.
I do my best to walk that walk.
Yes.
And, that's the only way you can do is set an example. And I see some of the therapists, they're out there smoking cigarettes and they're telling people not to be addicted to drugs. And I kind of laugh.
Well, the point, though, is also we don't have to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect.
Well, no, not perfect. But if you're going to set a standard, you got to be part of that standard.
Yeah.
You can't be addicted. It's like me being addicted to pot and telling you shouldn't drink.
Right.
So
Right.
that
Yeah.
way, it doesn't work.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
So, Fay, you jumped ahead, which I'm glad you did, because the follow up on that was, with the stigma, and we'll call it what I'm hoping for is a stigma reform in this
Yeah.
country. How do individuals really make a big difference? Because you're not, like you said, you're not the one that's going to be on the Senate floor arguing for this, but you're going to be out there arguing in the communities and working with people individually.
Mhm.
How can people make a real difference in the stigma and in the way we look at addictions? And we have to have mental health in there too,
Mhm.
because it's like we're a sick society.
Well, it's
Mhm.
interchangeable. Addiction and mental
You
health,
know,
they go hand in hand.
what would you say people need to be doing
Yeah.
individually?
Well, I mean, I think first of all is we own and name what's going on for us without shame.
Yeah,
So if I have gone through periods of depression, if I have gone through periods of substance use or whatever the issues are, is that I come forward as a human who has a lived experience and I own it without shame. And so part of that is, as I think John, you said earlier, that it's what did I learn from this and what can I contribute as a result of this? I used because I was in pain and I didn't have skills about how to treat myself
That's right.
without, ingesting alcohol, drugs, or using people to hook up so I could feel desired or whatever it was. I was aching inside. But what I found is my solution was killing me. I didn't know there were people in recovery. I didn't know what that was. I only knew about the problem of addiction and I didn't relate because I came from a different part of society. People like me, quote unquote, didn't have problems like that. So coming forward and being open today, yes, I have an MBA or I went to a great school or I worked at a great firm and I suffered and I struggled in my way and I got through it and you can too. So I speak to those where I have credibility. John, you were talking about not having credibility because you didn't have, a medical degree, but you have lived credibility, research credibility. And so I think part of that is owning where we have our credibility, being on the continuum of continuing to grow and change, having humility that we don't know everything,
That's
naming
right.
it, sharing it. That's one thing. I mean, that's just a lot of what I do with people is we spend a lot of time in definition. What does it mean to be sober versus what does it mean to be in recovery? What does it mean to be abstinent versus what does it mean? What is harm reduction? We spend a lot of time so we don't get into generalizations and assumptions because ultimately we want to be well. We want to be healthy and well, but let's define that not by how a pharmaceutical would define that, not by how your doctor would define
Yeah.
it. How do you define it in your culture? And how is that appropriate for your culture and in your community? And, you can't be well in a community that's sick. So we stabilize and then we work to make sure our families are well and our communities are well, that, shop locally, act globally kind of idea. So, I mean, Scott, with the question about what can we each do is we can attend to our own honesty, our own shame, and the language we use. And by the way, the dollars in our pockets are powerful. How we choose to spend our money, who we choose to vote for, all of those things can be influential. I spend a lot of time focused on what can organizations do to promote psychological safety in the workplace. Why psychological safety? Because we've spent a lot of time in this country, and looking at how can we have workplace safety so people don't cut off their fingers or get into accidents that are going to cause huge liability issues for organizations. But psychological safety so that an individual can come forward, whether it's to their manager or to HR or to whomever, and say, my spouse is struggling. I need some time to give them support so that they can get well, so that I can be well, so that I can show up here. And psychological safety, so someone can say, hey, I need to run out right now to get to my meeting, because if I don't do that, man, I'm going to have huge resentment and not be able to hear what's happening at the next meeting and then deliver on the results that I'm supposed to do. That we start communicating in ways that show that we're whole people, and that this is as important as the oxygen we breathe.
And you don't have to do it perfect. Like you were saying about being perfect. I'm going on 38 years in recovery, and I still got a lot of stuff that I'm working on.
Sure.
I just do my best to set the best example I can. Sometimes I falter, sometimes I don't.
Yes.
But that's what I believe people need to do, is just remember that there are no failures, there are only lessons, and you just strive to get better.
That's
Not
right.
perfect, but better.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that that the pain and the strain and the discomfort of our greatest weakness moments is what I call the birth of our strengths.
That's the birth of growth.
That is the birth of our strengths, and if we carry them like we went through that to become stronger, and that is now the strength. But you can't be ashamed. If you're ashamed of it, it's not your strength. It's still your weakness.
That's
it's still your weakness. So, Fay, incredible stuff. We're talking to Fay Zenoff, a addiction recovery strategist and coach and advocate. If you want to learn more about this incredible woman and the work that she's doing, go to fayzenoff.com. You got a great website. It's an easy navigation. People can learn all about you. And certainly you can send her an email at fzenoff@me.com. But that's actually on the website as well. So if you want to just go to the website, again, fayzenoff.com. It's good stuff to learn about what she's doing. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I'm glad that you took those imperfections and turned them into no, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect life, but I think you've got a perfect direction that you're heading in.
Absolutely,
I like that.
absolutely.
I do like
Thank
that.
you so much. Thank you so much. And you had mentioned to me at the very beginning about the podcast that I had been working on called The Sum of My Imperfections. And it is exactly each of those imperfections that brought me here to sit in front of you today, to have this conversation humbly with, two other people that are doing all they can so that it's a better world and there's more opportunity and people have hope and connection. And I thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you. And that's why I wrote my book about my life story. I was molested. My family was a mafia family, the whole 9 yards. The kid from the South Bronx who never gave up. And I talk about my molestation. I talk about all my shame. I talk about all my...
Yes.
And I'm open so this way I can help motivate people, because if you save one life, you save a whole family sometimes.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you.
Absolutely our pleasure. We're going to send you into the back room. Could you just hang out for a minute? Because we'll talk to you offline after we close out the show. But thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, speaking with Fay Zenoff, addiction recovery strategist. Please check out her website at fayzenoff.com. Also, want to know more about John and the mission that he's on and the things that he's doing, go to johnjgiordano.com. And of course, reminding you one more time that if you like this show, please share it with your friends, subscribe to the page, and leave your comments so that we know what you're thinking about the work that John is doing with this show. It's really, really important. We have great guests all the time.
Well, it's John and Scott.
Yeah, well, I'm a producer. I'm good with that.
He's more than a producer. No,
but I enjoy this, and I enjoy the mission of just trying to get the information out there. And you know what? Not everybody has to agree on everything. If somebody says something on this show that is not your cup of tea, keep listening, because what you'll find is we usually have more commonalities than we have places where we disagree. So don't focus on those. If you don't agree with something, that's fine. But listen to the other stuff, because I bet you we agree on a lot more than you think.
That's right.
So let's follow that. If we wanted to just focus on disagreements, we'd all go into politics. John, I hate it's crazy that we're already mid-August, and
I'm going to be 76 next week.
I got a birthday next week. You got a birthday next week. We're all getting older. but we're going
We're
to keep
getting
plugging away.
younger, not older. Younger.
I don't know about you. I'm getting older. I get out of bed. I start walking across the room, and my knees crack so much it's like a mariachi band is following me.
Well, you like music, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I love music. It's all perfect. All right, John. Great to see you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Any final thoughts, my friend?
Hey, listen, keep watching, keep listening, and keep learning. Remember, remain a student. You'll become a good teacher one day.
There you go. Y'all take care now.